We finished up yesterday talking about these this demographic soup, these sort of different categorizations, I suppose, of people in markets. Now, this is really useful for bigger organizations looking at bigger markets when they're trying to, maybe looking at a city or looking at a country and trying to pick out certain demographics, if you like. Demographic soup, I've called it. And I mentioned yuppies and single income, no kids, and hippers. So, and the idea here behind this was that we were looking at segmenting the marketplace in different ways, with the idea that as we segment the market, it makes it easier for us to focus in on somebody. I also mentioned water to you here. What I want to do is sort of just talk about a couple of things today, in particular the marketing mix, and then we'll do an assignment review. All right, so I want to talk about the marketing mix, and then we'll do sort of a review, okay? Including a brief discussion on brands. Now, the reason I want to talk about water is, like I said yesterday, we've created this. It's a marketing success story in one sense. Not great for the environment, but we've created this market in Ireland for bottled water, which we don't need, okay? And it's worth about €1 billion or so, okay? It started back in the 1980s when there was some mineral water available on the Irish market, mainly in higher class restaurants, expensive restaurants, and top class hotels, and with foreign visitors who would be buying it. And pretty much everybody else, didn't even consider it. But this Irish company had seen bottled water growing in other markets, these people, and they came back and they started a company called Ballygowan. And they sold water on the basis that it was pure Irish water, building on the sort of, I suppose, that back then the image of Ireland as a green island, as a simple, unpolluted space, basically. And that opened up the bottled water market in Ireland, and then others started to come in and looking at it as well. I mean, it's just water, right? It's just water. I did this in class, one of my in-person classes recently, and we looked at the ingredients on a couple of different bottles of bottled water. And yeah, the only difference really was the microscopic amounts of different minerals in the content. That's it. But it's a market, and people swear by certain brands and not others. I know somebody who swears by Volvic. They don't like the taste of Evian. They'd rather drink Volvic. I'm not sure I get the difference, but maybe that's just me. Maybe my palate is not that fine. But yeah, selling water to Irish people is a bit like selling sand in the Middle East. It's plentiful. How can we do it? And yet, it is being positioned well and worked well and works. In particular, if we look at something like River Rock, okay? Now, this says recycled bottle. But if you just look there, just River Rock, you'll see it up there, and River Rock. You don't see it on this one here because it's turned the other way. There's River Rock there. But this product actually is River Rock bottled water. Coca-Cola owns River Rock. So Coca-Cola, which we looked at the start of this module, has a number of other drinks brands, has a lot of soft drinks in the marketplace. And they saw the growth of water, bottled water, particularly in the UK and Ireland. And they realized that this could take some market share away from them for, casual drinks that people would drink and buy and drink. And they decided they needed to be in that space. So somebody was presented with a choice of buying a bottle of Coke or a bottle of Evian or a bottle of Fanta or a bottle, well, sometimes Evian was winning. And that was possibly at the expense of some of the McDonald's brands. So they decided they needed to be in that segment. So it was the drinks market, the non-alcoholic drinks, they were in the soft drinks part of the market, but they realized that the non-fizzy, non-sugar category, so the juices and other cold non-alcoholic drinks category was growing. In particular, the bottled water, the water segment was growing. And as it was growing, it was taking some market share from some other segments. So they realized they needed to get into that segment. So they came up with River Rock, and they introduced River Rock, which is bottled water, okay? And that is provided certainly in the Irish market and in the UK market. Um, and they've got a foothold, and it's now one of the strong brands. It's not necessarily the strongest brand because what it has, there's a lot of smaller, cheaper brands now. So, and they're probably, I don't know what the breakdown across the market is, but the cheaper brands possibly do reasonably well in the market at this stage because it's almost bringing water back to a commodity. But these guys were looking at this and realized, you know what? There's a market here, and we need to find a way to compete in this market. How do we compete in this market, selling basically the same product as somebody else? It has to be through branding. It has to be through marketing communications. Okay, I mean, how else can you sell water? I mean, how do you create a foothold in a bottled water market? So I'd imagine because where you live is a lot hotter than where I live. I've been to Vietnam and Singapore and a couple of places as your way. So I know that bottled water is important. But I imagine that it's probably very much a commodity, and you probably, when you buy, well, I don't know, do you buy bottled water? Do you buy, does the price matter? Does the brand matter? What do you buy? Well, I was trying to figure this out myself. And like for me, and maybe I'm silly, right? I don't buy the cheapest water because I think, okay, that can't be very good. But I don't buy the dearest water. So I find somewhere in the middle. I tend to avoid the brands. I mean, I'll buy Volvic if it's on special offer. But I don't buy bottled water much anyway. But I'm quite happy to buy the own brands in stores. I don't really like doing it, you know. Usually I have a water bottle that I bring with me and we fill in taps. But yeah, it's an interesting space, I suppose. Okay, so what Coca-Cola decided to do was they needed to get into the marketplace, right? So they had a range of soft drinks, like I said, okay? But they came up with this brand, Deep River Rock. It's sort of become just River Rock now, but it was Deep River Rock, which of course, what does Deep River Rock try and get? It's really like the Volvic thing. Like the whole Volvic is branded on the basis that it's water filtered through volcanic rock. Okay, so you get, and even the brand Volvic, even the bottle. There's a 1.5 liter bottle of Volvic. Okay, and so it sort of plays on this volcanic rock categorization. So this is current branding. So it's got the sort of the mountains, it's got the trees, and it's got this idea of the volcano and the thing. There is natural Volvic, natural mineral water. That's I think in German. Here it is. See what this one says. Volvic water is exceptional. To create a bottle that would promote this exceptional water, so this is obviously a branding company to come up with a new bottle for Volvic. You see, this is I love this. It's exceptional water which has been filtered in the Auvergne volcanoes for 6,000 years. That implies that the water is 6,000 years old. Now, I don't really understand water filtration. I'm pretty sure we're not drinking 6,000-year-old water, as in it hasn't just been sitting there for 6,000 years. It's part of a natural cycle, and there's a spring somewhere. Okay. So that's what I'll do is I'll give you that. Now that is, I haven't read it, so it is a modern take on the Volvic bottle. So maybe this is what we're going to see in the future from Volvic. But that's one of the brands. Let's just see. Let's look at Ballygowan. So this is the Ballygowan bottle, or one of them anyway. Ballygowan. This was one of the original bottles of Ballygowan, Irish spring water. Very much that sort of Irish Celtic look on it there. It's developed over time. This is what we see now as sort of the Ballygowan bottles at the moment. Well, it's basically the same. Okay. What other brands have we got? Evian, which you're familiar with. Evian, the seven. Now look, see, Evian here has got this sort of mountains in the background too. So it's trying to get across this idea of filtration, natural filtration in terms of bottled water. Okay, so Coca-Cola were trying to compete with this. Okay. So Coca-Cola are trying to compete with this. So they introduced this Deep River Rock. And this Behavior Attitudes was, I think, the advertising company involved. Sorry, actually, they weren't. It was Ogilvy and Mather were the advertising company. And I was at a meeting where they talked about behavior and attitudes around this. So they were tasked with assessing consumer perception of the market and providing actionable insight for the packaging design team. Well, one of the things they realized was that the market needed to be segmented. And if they were going to gain a foothold in the market, you know, against the likes of Volvic and Evian, these French-based bottled water specialists, you know, selling bottled water and content for a long time. So they're going to get a foothold. They really need to segment the market. There's no point in trying to go after all of the bottled water marketplace. So they realized that there was probably a segment not being well served, first off. And that segment was younger people, particularly people at work, who were tuning more into the health benefits of drinking fresh water, or drinking water more regularly. Fresh is funny when you think it's in a bottle all day. Anyway, drinking water, okay? As opposed to coffee or Coke or juices or whatever. So they realized there was a segment of people for whom bottled water was becoming important in terms of lifestyle, not because it was bottled, but because they were drinking water a lot more, because they were interested in fitness, and who weren't maybe as brand conscious in terms of the likes of Volvic or some of the more expensive brands in the marketplace. They also realized that they were consuming water in a different way. That they were, because it was more to do with health, they were drinking it on an ongoing basis, which meant they need a portability solution, okay? So they really looked at the 500 milliliter, a half-liter size bottle. And that's really where they put their focus. Volvic, you know, usually was in 1.5 liter bottles in Ireland. Other ones were in that sort of space. So they had smaller bottles, but they weren't as big in that section of the market. So River Rock focused on that. And their initial campaign, which I thought was nuts, I don't think this is it here, no. Their initial campaign was River Rock, what do you wear? Now, I don't know what that means, but what do you wear was this campaign. And it actually did really, really well. I remember, because we were doing our thesis on them at the time, I remember meeting the guy whose slogan it was. And I mean, he was a bit of a fruitcake in some ways, a bit left field, a bit lateral, probably very creative. And his take on it was this idea that people were bringing this water around with them. So if you were young, you were working in an office, you had a bottle of water, you were carrying it with you around to meetings and so on. So then it became water you wear. They focused on the bottle as being something that people would attract somebody's eye, and they would carry it around with them. And that was their way into the marketplace. And it worked. So it got them into the marketplace. The next time around then, 5 or 10 years later, they were looking at trying to make more ground. And they realized that their consumer segment, and other consumers too, were becoming more environmentally aware. So on the basis of that, they looked at new packaging, okay, which did actually drive and increase the sales. And it was this, where the bottle shape didn't change radically, but the whole focus was on recycled bottles. So you see River Rock, recycled bottle, River Rock, recycled bottle, okay? And this one here was sugar-free, now I don't know how you can have sugar-free water, but anyway. Their focus was on a recycled bottle. So they changed the packaging to 100% recycled plastics. They focused the brand on the recycled bottle. And that meant that when people were going to buy water, they were attracted to the idea of the recycled bottle because they were just buying water. They weren't making as big a distinction between the water brands, but this one said a recycled bottle, so that was better for the environment. So they were buying that bottle. That was the came from a clear understanding of the market and of the segments in the market and what was important to the customers in the market. And it gave them a jump in the marketplace in terms of not because the product, the internal, not because the water changed, but because the packaging changed. And this is what this sort of was based around. So Deep River Rock's new 100% recycled bottle range. There it is. Produce a 100% recycled bottle range. Fully recyclable. Now going one step further, since June, every single bottle with our PET portfolio is made from 100% recycled plastic. Okay. Now, that's what they say. I don't know much about it, but that's what the thing was. But that clarity of understanding of the market segment enabled them to make ground in the market. Okay. What it brings you to is this idea of the marketing mix. So let me just click on this. Because this is a song. Okay. From 1967.
Today's special is Memphis Soul Stew. We sell so much of this, people wonder what we put in it. We're gonna tell you right now. Give me about a half a teacup of bass. Now I need a pound of fatback drums. Now give me 4 tablespoons of boiling Memphis guitars. This gonna taste all right. Now just a little pinch of organ. Now give me a half a pint of horn. Bring to a boil. That's it right there. Now beat well.
Okay, what's that all about? If you think about it, what I'm really trying to do is just make a point. And that is, in that song, I think, Curtis, what he's doing is he's calling in each of the band members one after the other. One after the other. What that does is it gives it this ability to have this sort of layered sound. Okay? And it's that idea that so he brings one after the other, and that's affecting what the marketing mix is. It's not one thing. Marketing is not one thing. It's this layer after layer after layer after layer of elements. So the original marketing mix started with these four items: product, price, place, and promotion. Okay. Like I said, there is an expanded version, which is product, place, price, promotion, people, process, and physical environment. But we'll just stick with this for the moment. And the idea is, well, what is the product? What are the features? What's the quality? What's the branding? What's the packaging, which is a subset of the 4 Ps? The price, what's our pricing strategy? Do we price it here? Do we price it down? Where do we price it? And where do we make it available? What channels? And how do we go about promoting the product or the services? So the idea is that there's a profile, that we create a profile for our product. So our Deep River Rock, well, the product was water, but it was the packaging was making a big difference. So the product with the 100% recycled packaging was really part of the piece. And that drove the promotion around, this recycled message. So it went from water you wear, which is water you carried around, to water in a recycled bottle, so we're friendly to the environment, et cetera, et cetera. The price was pitched not at the highest level, but, and I suppose it ties in with the sort of sustainability message. It was pitched at this sort of level below that, but not at the cheapest end of the market either. That, there was a little bit of pain there to help save the planet, but also we're not, taking too much out of it either, in terms of the profit. The place, well, it was the normal channels where the target people would go. So news agents, convenience stores, supermarkets, where people would buy, would stop for a snack or would stop for something on the go, or people would buy sort of a 6-pack or 12-pack of bottles for the week ahead. Okay, so it's that side of things. It's trying to figure out what's the right mix here of elements in the marketing mix for our customers. Like I said, it could be expanded to talk about other P's. If we talk about price, well, we might set the price point based on market norms, okay, or based on the perceived value by the customer. I think that's much more important. You know, what is the customer looking for? What value is the customer looking for? Can we provide that value? And how do they recognize that value based on price? Is it important to them? Is this a key element? Are they sensitive to price? And if you think about it, there are different strategies. So McDonald's is, of course, a low-cost food producer. Now, it's able to do it because its operations are designed that way, and the quality of the food, etc. All of that is geared towards having a low-price, instant, convenient, fast food solution. Okay. IKEA, it's about the better every day. It's about looking after the people with the thin wallets. So it's also in the low cost, but they do that by sharing the burden with their customers and with the design focus and everything else, so that people can come in, and the whole thing is geared towards enabling people to buy a product and get it home and unpack it and assemble it, etc. Whereas Apple, you pay a premium for Apple products because they're perceived to be better or better designed or work differently, or there's a different association with them. So you wouldn't sell an Apple iPhone at a lower price because that devalues the product, okay? So we might talk about pricing methods as starting from either cost-oriented or market-oriented pricing. Now, I'll be brutally honest. I think up here is bad. I would not want to be trading long-term up here because cost-oriented pricing is a race to the bottom, okay? There are businesses where that suits, but it doesn't sit well with me in terms of the way I like to do business. So I would always try to be market-oriented pricing. And probably a lot of it around perceived value. Here's what the value is. So value pricing, not just cost plus, because that doesn't make sense. It has to be pricing that makes sense to the customer, that sort of reflects the value of the product or the service. It could be around the going rate. This is what the market bears. We could have auction type pricing. Again, I'm not as experienced on that, so I'd be careful around that. And then you can have differential pricing as well. So there are different approaches to pricing. As we see here, let's look at the global iPhone 10 product, global prices. So this is from a couple of years ago, the iPhone 10. What are we at? iPhone 14 now? So the same product was selling for these prices locally, but converted to US dollars, this is the price of the product. So it was actually cheapest in Canada at the equivalent of $991, where it was dearest in the European Union at $13.50. Okay, so that's it's close to 40% dearer. Okay, about 37% dearer than Canada. Okay, why is that? Why is the pricing differential there? Is it because they're made in Canada and we're paying shipping charges to the rest of the world? Well, that's not the case because they're not generally manufactured in China. A lot of the stuff is manufactured, in Canada. A lot of stuff is manufactured in China, certainly some of the component parts. There are assembly and factories. I mean, Apple makes a lot of stuff in Ireland. There are factories in Cork in Ireland, which I think specialize in the iPad and maybe the iMac, I'm not sure. But our pricing would be pretty much on par with Europe. So it's not to do where the thing's made. It's to do with the value, the perceived value in the marketplace. It's the pricing that the market will bear. Okay. If we look at the range of products, so on the one hand, the same product across different markets. On the other, we've got a range of products here looking at two markets, Germany and the United States. So again, this is old information, but the same sort of thing is ongoing. So look at the iPad Pro Apple Pencil. Okay. €109 in Germany, including that. Without the sales tax, that sales tax, it's €92 in Germany. And that equates to US dollars as $103. whereas it's selling in the United States pre-tax for $99. So the price differential is actually $4 between Germany and the United States on that product, which is 4%. But the price differential on the iPhone SE 16 gigabytes is 16% or $63. Why is that? Why isn't it just a standard, rate? There is a variation. Is that to do with the type of product? Is it to do with the type of buyers? So the iPhone SE was like a stripped down iPhone in one particular market. It wasn't the top range at that time. So, does that mean that there was a segment in the market in Europe and Germany that were more price conscious or were less price conscious? Maybe that's the case. I don't know. Okay. So we could look at any one of these and find reasons. And that's the point. It's not that we make the same decision in every segment, every market, or with every product. It's that we look at every product in every segment and we figure out what's the right price in that segment. Okay. That might mean that we have a situation where a product actually is not worth selling in that market because we can't sell it at a price that makes sense. Well, that's a good thing to know. There's no point in putting it into the market if we're not going to be able to get some sort of return on it. Unless there's some sort of greater reason for doing that, like, we're keeping customers happy because they're buying other products from us. Here's a can of Coke. This is this is what really annoys me sometimes. The same product in the marketplace in different channels is sold at different prices. So if I buy a can of Coke on a newsstand, like at a bus station or outside a train station or whatever, I might pay 1.1 euros. This is an old side. I might pay 180 or 190 now for that can. Okay. If I get it out of the airport, it'll probably be somewhat similar. If I buy it in a grocery store, it might be a third of the price. So if I buy it in Tesco's or I buy it in Aldi or Lidl, I might pay a lot less for the exact same product than if I buy it at the airport or if I buy it in a hotel or a restaurant. Because if I buy it in a hotel or a restaurant, they bring it with a glass with ice, some added value, but it's still not worth 3 times the price. So the point is that the same product is priced differently depending on the channel. The grocery stores and the supermarket chains are relying on volume. They're buying in bulk and they're selling off a lot of product at a lower rate. Okay. And it's probably one product amongst a range of products that are being bought. Whereas at the train station, it's a passing customer. Customer spending no time. It's a quick in, grab something and go. So it's a different dynamic. All right. So pricing is the first part of the marketing mix. And this, of course, is a response to the segmentation and the analysis and the understanding of the value that the customer places on the product. Yeah. Okay. Next up, the product itself. Well, what is it that we're actually selling? What is the product or the service? Again, it has to be linked to the customer's needs. We should be considering how and where the customer intends to use the product. So like with the Rolls Royce, if I'm buying a Rolls Royce, I'm going to be using that in a different way than if I'm buying an electric scooter. Right? The Rolls Royce is likely going to be bought as part of a luxurious, maybe chauffeured travel solution. I know of one person who has a Rolls Royce who drives it themselves. I never really understood that. Rolls Royce to me always, well, I know I'm on, but it always seemed to me to be something that it should have a driver. It should come with a driver. That if I'm going to have a Rolls Royce, I have somebody to drive me around. And I sit in the back in luxury because some of the cool stuff was in the back of the car. If you're going to buy a car just to drive, why would you buy a Rolls Royce? Why wouldn't you buy something a bit more, I don't know, fun to drive, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, so what is the product? What does the customer want? How are they going to use the product? So if it's a Rolls Royce, I'm going to use it by having somebody drive me around. If it's a Honda Civic or a Toyota Avensis or a Toyota Camry, I'm going to drive it to and from work. Okay? So actually, fuel efficiency is going to be important. Reliability is going to be important. So why are they going to use the product? How are we going to brand the thing? How are we going to package it? And how will we make sure that the product is different from others in the marketplace? Well, Nike makes sports shoes, the same as Adidas or Reebok or some of the other providers. And their distinction is all about lifestyle. It's all about endorsement. It's all about, showcasing not just the best athletes, but the best stories in their products. So like we saw with the kid running, it's not about the best athlete in that case. It's about perseverance. It's about commitment. Okay. And yet, then again, we have the Jordan Air or the Serena Williams stuff where you got the top, instantly recognizable sports person demonstrating the product. Apple again. What is the product? AirPods. I think AirPods is a cool product to think about. I don't have them. Mine are wired because I'm old school. Of course, I get the next iPhone I get, or probably the next one that won't have the ability to connect, so I'll probably have to get them at some point. But AirPods, they're all over the place now. Okay, Bluetooth was there already. It's really an innovative step, not a radical innovation, but an innovative step to create a product that has the sort of Apple thing. It's AirPods. They're cool. They're different. Bottom line is they're over $100 for the basic pair. That's more than that for the more expensive pair. First of all, I think they're ridiculous to spend the money on them because, since they're not connected by wire, they cannot fall out. Right? They're not easy to lose. And if you lose one, you lose both of them. You can't buy one replacement. So I'm not sure about it. And yet, people want them because Apple is really, really good at creating this desirability factor. It's tied in with their creativity and so on. But that also means that pricing is not an issue for them. So they can have the higher price, distinguishing that sort of value add to it. And the packaging and everything. So when you buy an Apple product, the packaging is really, really cool. Really, really cool, isn't it? It's not some sort of plastic case. Like the packaging is just perfect. Okay. Anyway, so that's the product. We could talk about promotion. Looking at where and when we reach the target audience, looking at the optimum mediums, whether TV, is it Twitter, is it Instagram, is it TikTok, is it cinema advertising, is it billboard, is it on the side of a bus? What's the best way for us to promote our products? So we could look at McDonald's and Coca-Cola. Tends to be, some sort of video based, doesn't it? Tends to be, an ad on TV. Right, not that we watch TV as much anymore. Tends to be, maybe it's little short pieces on Twitter or on other feeds or on YouTube or whatever. Can be product placement in movies. Can be some billboards as well, right? And of course, probably the biggest thing for McDonald's is the golden arches. When we put a McDonald's out there, it's really to attract the people in the locality, so it's a very visible building. Coca-Cola, we looked at already. It's that sort of global, upbeat, I don't know, what would you call it? Warmth message, warm and happy, moment of relaxation, moment of refreshment. Okay, so again, how do we approach that? There's this, I'm going to share this with you very briefly. Goldilocks was a thing. I think it's still there. It's not the same as it was, but at the time, this was the I won't play all of this. You get a sense of it after about a minute. In other words, this was tracking the stereotypical approach to young girls, all about dolls and dresses and pinkness and everything else. So Goldilocks was founded by this lady who did engineering college, was one of the only few females in her engineering course. I kind of wanted to show to girls, young girls in particular, that engineering was an option. So she developed this range of toys. you know, on the neighbor by Lego, Lego type of all this sort of stuff with. Okay. So Goldilocks. So it was like this little board of these things, and you could make little engines. You could make these. But the type of thing you can do with some Lego as well. But this was really focused on as I said, well, it was focused on the parents of girls, right? Ideally, that was the idea. So then we talk about place. Well, where should the product reach the market? What's the channel of distribution? Where do we store things? How do we get stuff handled and transported, etc.? How do we get the product to a position where the customer can buy it? This, of course, has changed radically because of COVID, because we're doing much more online. And some companies are having to adapt radically. Now, the likes of for McDonald's, they can't really do that because McDonald's is an in-person thing generally. Although what's been quite interesting is to see the growth of McDonald's ordering and takeaway. Well, takeaway was always there, but delivery of McDonald's actually is something that's been happening more and more lately. But the idea is that we have to think about these: product, price, place, promotion. How best do we make decisions across a range of things which enables us to get the product out to the product or service to the customer in a way they want it, where and when makes sense, at a price that they find attractive, that ties in with the value they perceive the product to have, to address their problems or their issues or their needs. So place is the next piece on that. Okay. There are some additional ones, as I said: person, process, principle. Person becoming important because we tend to deal with people more and more. That can be a source of competitive advantage. You know, it depends on the business, I suppose. Process also, especially with regards to services. How do we do things? How do we provide the service? How do we make the product? How do we communicate with the customer? So one of the things might be using the online channels. How do we make it work from an online perspective in terms of things like payment processing, in terms of speeding up the process, in terms of distribution, etc.? Is there a principle or a purpose? Do we stand for something more than just, products, sales, promotion, that sort of stuff? What you see is some companies are starting to exhibit principles and purposes. So Patagonia recently, the owners of Patagonia basically gave the company away. They decided, that they were committed to environmental issues and they'd made a lot of money out of it. And they decided, okay, rather than sell the company to somebody else, we're going to give it in the form of a trust to everybody, basically, and it becomes a not-for-profit. Okay. So these are the things that feed into the marketing mix. And I suppose, like I said, that's the expanded one. We could talk about looking at product, price, and promotion for individual products like dog food. So, the product might be based on the size of the dog we're targeting, or we might have to develop products for different sizes of dogs. The place might be, have to go through pet stores because that's where people go, or is there an alternative to that? The price, dog food is, pet stores are great businesses because if people have pets, they're like children. They'll spend money on them, okay? So pricing doesn't tend to bother most pet owners as much. Again, you could flesh that out. There's lots of different segments. So we could look at applying the marketing mix with phones, right? Looking at, what's the product, might depend on the segment in the market. Here we were talking about segmenting based on dog size, based on owner type, based on the breed. Here we're talking based on the age profile. So somebody getting a phone 16 to 22 is different to somebody at 45, okay, in terms of the product, place, price, promotion mix that might apply, okay? So that's the idea, is that we can look at anything. We could sort of figure out some sort of profile of a marketing mix that makes sense for the customer we've identified in the segment we've identified, who's trying to solve a problem that we've identified, okay? So look, in the last few minutes, let me just do a quick look at the review of the assignment. The usual, I'll skip through that. Task one, you work for a professional organization for marketeers, and you're going to complete the basic tasks here. So this one is about how organizations use different types of marketing techniques to achieve their targets and what are the limitations. Well, the iMac is an example. This is an iMac, as I said. Sorry, I should have said that. Just to give you an idea, that's where it comes. It's here. It was the second generation iMac. After this, back in 1998, this was the second generation. I actually have one of these somewhere. And it's become, over time, it's become different. It was moving to a flat screen. That was the first thing. I suppose it was the first real computer with a flat screen. Or one of the first anyway, set the tone. And you can see it developing over time. And the whole idea that whereas this was the computer, first of all, before the iMac, the computer screen, it was like that old TV screen, and the computer was a separate box. This put it all into one box, a bit like the Apple Macintosh way back. Here, the computer was in this half a grapefruit. That thing's about the size of a half a football, basically. Okay, and then they moved completely, just putting it all into one thing here, which is the iMac that we have right today. This is the current iMac here. You know, the product was an Apple product, so you know it was innovative and everything else. And the idea behind the screen like this was that you could look at it from any angle. Well, how did you do that? Well, the inspiration was the angle poised lamp, which is also the thing for Pixar, if you like. But it's the idea that actually with that screen and that arm, you could push it, you could pull it, you could turn side to side. You know, you could actually move it around, and it was very user-friendly in that sense. So the product was innovative and everything else. And it's what that's all. Well, it just did what other computers did, but it was an Apple, so it sort of did it a bit better in some ways. But it suited people who were more creative, who liked inspiration, who liked good design. And it sort of feeds the brand. We didn't talk too much about brand. We could do a whole module on branding itself. But it's the business or marketing concept that helps us identify, you know, the company or the product or the individual. Branding is intangible. It's really, it's like saying, this is what I stand for. This is who we are. This is what we're about. It's not, so the Big Mac is a branded product, but the Big Mac is, you know, as a brand, well, it's fast food. It's tasty. It's relatively cheap. Okay. And the fast food is really, really fast. Okay. But that's it. McDonald's doesn't stand for much more than that, I suppose. It stands for an element of standardization around it, but that's it. Whereas, if we look at, you know, Nike stands for doing it, just do it. Just, you know, like that with the kid jogging, it's greatness comes from inside. It's about getting involved, it's about doing, it's about perseverance. And you don't have to be Michael Jordan. You don't have to be Usain Bolt. You can be an athlete in your own right. So the brand is what are the identifying markers that help us distinguish different products and so on. So there's some more stuff about branding there. The Apple has always been very strong in branding in terms of here's what we are. And the Apple products are always fantastic. The thinnest, the fastest, the lightest, the most innovative, the clearest. They're always that sort of level of exaggeration involved. But they find really interesting ways to convey those things. So when the MacBook Air came out, the thing about it was you could put it in this envelope. That was part of the advertising. You could slip it in an envelope, and it was light enough that you could actually potentially, you wouldn't, but you could potentially, you know, put it in the post. I'm not going to talk about relationship marketing. I talked about Further Quinn early on. There's some limitations around that. I'm not going to spend any time on that. For task 2, identify how organizations use market research to develop a marketing plan. Well, like I said, these guys, you know, looked at the market and realized that there was a gap in the market in terms of knowing the customer, in terms of knowing the customer and what the customer wants, and recognizing that there was a gap in the health snack market for health snacks that actually tasted good. What else? Describe how and why selected organizations target their customers. Well, look, the salt example from Tesco, you know, how do you like your salt? Like many different variations. But by profiling the customers and realizing that there are differences in the groups that we can segment on different bases, such as the demographics, we can come up with products and promotional campaigns which target individuals. We talked about that. We talked about the step process. Develop a coherent marketing mix. So again, talking about the marketing mix, well, we kind of talked about that. The Goldilocks thing was an example, as was the water stuff. All right. Best of luck with it, and I will hopefully see you in your next module at some stage. Bye-bye. Thank you.